This is an interview with BarbaraHolland and AndyFurco, two of the most important people from IARSLCE. That is an interesting word for Germans because it says sliced eggs.
Well, it's high protein.
Yes, that's right. And I wanted to talk with both of them for two reasons. One reason is because we need to set up a research program in Europe on service learning, and that is one of the big questions I have to both of you, but I would like to start with you, Barbara. And the other reason is how can we develop, how can we emerge as an existing traditional university into an engaged university? And I figured, well, that's maybe your experience, or both of you, both of them. So these are the two questions. So what do you think, Barbara, is what is the future of research in service learning? Because I remember you said, well, basically we have all the results, but they are scattered. But there may be some future challenges on research as well.
Well, there is a growing body of literature about research on service learning and community engagement. It is dispersed across many different disciplines and many different venues or journals or conferences. So while there is a sense in some people's mind that we haven't gotten a lot of research, we really have quite a bit. But it's very diffuse across all those different disciplines and perspectives. So a sociologist can find easily what's been published in the realm of sociology, but there may be very valuable and relevant work that was published in psychology or health science or engineering or biology, and that would be difficult. So part of what this conference does, the International Association, is try to bring together current and past research from around the world across the disciplines and build on it. So that said, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and the research has not been synthesized, and people haven't had an opportunity to build on prior research and take it further. And we still have a lot of work to do in a critical and diagnostic perspective on what is it about service learning that's producing the benefits and impacts and results we see. So there's a lot of synthesis and further building of on prior research to be done.
And just to add to that, I concur with Barbara, and part of it is that this is a disparate field that is operationalized in a lot of different venues, through a lot of different disciplines, through many different lenses. One of the purposes of having this conference was to actually bring together those individual investigators who were conducting research on service learning to come together and share with each other the work they were doing, but also begin to build a body of knowledge, a body of understanding. One of the sessions we did actually right before the conference was on the building a research agenda. And the agendas we currently have, there are quite a few out there, are now 6, 7, 8, some 10 years old, depending on which aspect of service learning we're looking at. And I think it's time for a new research agenda. And one of the things we wanted to do was to take a look at the existing agendas, saying what questions haven't we answered, what have we answered, and what burning questions do we have now that we need to move forward. But also a question about how to do the research and how to do it better, which are other questions that continue to be a centerpiece of what we're trying to accomplish. So your question was how do you build a research program? I would say three things. One is to take a look at what's already in place. We have more than 600 published studies now on service learning that are out there, which is a great body to build on. So building on what's already in place. Second, bringing together those who are doing research in the field to come together and build a community. And third, to have a clear sense of what it is that we want to know that we don't yet know. And I think that begins to spark some interest and some involvement in a program.
And the field is growing, the literature and research is growing on an international perspective, and we can already see there are different perspectives and different interpretations of service learning and its purposes and intended outcomes in different countries. So we look forward at the conference to having more international participation and international re-examination of existing work, or totally new questions in new settings that reveal new things about service learning.
We are thinking about to start something like an European research network on that as well, although we are still small. What would be your recommendations how to start?
Well, I think Andy's on the right track. I think you do want to convene and to develop some focused questions so you're complementing and building on each other's work and asking the deeper questions. I mean, people here may say, I want to study the impact of service learning on students. Well, what about that? There are many. Is it the duration? Is it the nature of the reflection? What kind of reflection? Right. So talking as a community of scholars about the deeper, more nuanced questions that will help the whole world have a deeper understanding of what it is about quality practice and service learning that produces particular kinds of effects.
And the other thing I would add too is that there is quite a bit of activity happening in Europe around service learning research. And I mean, I've been to 3 service learning conferences in Germany over the last 8 years. So it's finding those who are doing this work who perhaps don't know about each other's work. In Ireland, in Italy, in Spain, I mean, lots of countries are doing this work. UK, it's bringing that, having a European, I think, service learning research network is wonderful, and I think there will be a lot of people who come to that because there are these pockets of activity taking place, but there's no venue to really bring them together. I think people are eager to have that.
Okay, thank you. One last question, the question about how do we start how do we kind of transform a traditional university into an engaged university, which is kind of a very broad question, but I know you have a lot of experience about that.
Andy and I have both done separate and complementary forms of research about institutionalization or university adoption of community engagement and service learning as a practice within institutional culture and the work of faculty, staff, and students and community together. So there's actually a very robust body of literature on that topic that again could be tested and tried out in Europe and perhaps adapted for European context and interest and objectives. So we do know a fair amount about what influences institutionalization. I would add that in my own work on organizational change, it's very clear that while there are patterns across how institutions and the faculty and staff and leaders within them may come to adopt or to critique the idea or the relevance of community engagement and service learning in a particular university, those patterns are common but often have distinctive components. It's because the nature of community engagement and service learning is contextual. And if you're a university in Heidelberg, you're probably going to have a different context and way of thinking about it than if you're a university in a rural part of Germany.
Right.
So you have to think about the impact of context on the change. But there's much to be learned from the existing literature.
So how does one get started on this? And building off of what Barbara said, it's really looking at why do we want to become an engaged university? Why do we want to have community engagement? For what reasons and what purposes? And those purposes are going to be determined by the nature and the context in which the work is being operationalized. And so like Barbara and I always say, the goal is not to do community engagement. The goal is to use community engagement to accomplish other important institutional priorities. So the question I would ask, if I were to ask you more about the work you're doing at the institution, is what are the institutional priorities? What does the institution want to be? What are the important goals for the university, whether it's around being for students, whether it's for faculty, whether it's for research, whether it's the town-gown relationships, what is it that the university wants to accomplish, and where then does it make sense to have community engagement contribute to helping to achieve those goals. That's what's going to help institutionalize this. Otherwise, what happens is we set up a program that sits over here, and then for those who want to do it, we'll do it, but it's not going to transform the institution in any way to become a more engaged institution.
So it's part of the identity process of the institution.
Community engagement, service learning are methods. They are techniques of doing teaching, learning, and research as core business of the institution. And so Andy's right. You think about what are the strategic goals of the university in terms of teaching, learning, research, and community or public relationships. And community engagement and service learning are part of the strategy, the action method you use to pursue those goals.
Very good. Thank you very much.